Добрий день. Починаємо наш круглий стіл, присвячений політичним підсумкам півріччя. Перш за все,
First of all, I would like to pay the tribute and minute of silence to pay tribute to the memory of Pavlo Shermet, the person who actually died or was killed as a soldier, which is another proof that the war is not waged only in the east of Ukraine, but also in the capital city. First of all, we wanted to cancel our briefing, but then we decided that we should keep it in our agenda. This is the best way how to keep a good memory of that gentleman. Thank you. So, political summary of our first 6 months. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Vladimir Panyota, General Director of the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology, for him to say what is the foundation which lies in the base of the turbulent and very dubious events which we had during this period. Within 5 minutes which I have at my disposal, it's impossible to tell everything which took place in our society. Even if you give me 7 minutes, it's not enough. If speaking about the trends available, the situation which is available today, it changed for the worse. It became more tense in our society. The situation in our society, and they have published in the newspaper Zerkalo, Tizhny and Mirror of the Week the article whether the social burst is possible, or I don't know whether sociologists actually can forecast that, because they failed to do that in forecasting or foreseeing the previous two revolutions. Speaking about the trust or level of trust or confidence in the authorities or the powers that be, it goes down. It decreases. To my mind, it decreases somewhat. But again, it has been already too low, and this is a kind of regularity now. The lower is the level, the lower the rate of decline. This kind of relative mathematical regularity. Speaking about the Prime Minister, unlike all other Prime Ministers before him, he did not get the credit of trust from the very beginning, and that's why the attitude towards him has not changed drastically or significantly, and remained at the same level it was from the very beginning. Also, I would like to add that, generally speaking, the situation is a bit better than it seems to be, because previously, earlier, let's say, back in 2013, the mass media did not carry in such we would form our different problems or the investigation of corruption, etc. And actually, our study of the corruption proves that the level of corruption somewhat decreased. But as for the trust towards the political parties, generally speaking, actually this level of trust decreased drastically as well. Speaking about the ratings of many political forces, it's clear that the rating of the People's Front significantly dropped over the last 6 months, and actually they cannot almost reaching the bottom, and it doesn't have to drop any further. The ratings of other political forces, on the other hand, somewhat increased, save for the Yulia Tymoshenko party, which is different from some other parties, and they have a better position. Her rhetorics regarding tariffs appear to be more efficient than any other, let's say, slogans or any other political parties, and there's somewhat better situation, though not too much. We can see in the party of Oleg Lyashko, but speaking in principle, all of them I mean, those ratings are within the limits of the let's say the sample error. So leading the rating is Tymoshenko party, which leads away far away from the second place party of Petro Poroshenko. But the rest are approximately the same level of ratings, I mean. Also, I'd like to add that the sociologists also have another very difficult problem. Different ratings in this country always differed from each other, and this actually aroused some suspicions among journals and society that some of the sociological centers have been bribed and they provide incorrect data. And the difference could be accounted for the time when they were carried out, or different accompanying events or circumstances in the list of the different political party. Until a political party is registered, nobody can know the list, the names in the list, and the place in the list, and some of the preliminary questions asked. I believe that those should be the leading questions, the first in the forms. Now, if we are talking about our studies or research of the Donbass area, different centers actually have a different approach to the ratio, speaking about the study or research of the Donbass area. For example, our data are different from the Razumkov Center because we poll the part of the Donbass area which is controlled by the government of Ukraine, and also we actually poll those people who are according to the assessment of the Central Election Committee. The Center also takes the same, let's say, controlled area in the Donbass, but they take the margins of Donbass area, which is twice as large as ours, because they work within the boundaries of 2012. So we have to take that in consideration when our colleagues have to recalculate those. They have to take that into consideration. We actually had expert polls. We put the questions to 50 experts using the same techniques which were used in July 2015. So the floor is given to our analyst of the Democratic Initiative Fund, Andrei Sukharin. So very briefly, please tell us about the principle of the expert polling. Well, generally speaking, judging by the expert polling, we can see that the major political event became the political crisis, and its consequences is being named among those events which are of positive nature and negative nature, and those which could be called as neutral ones. In the way out of this political crisis, formation of a new government and the election to the Verkhovna Rada, the expert community believes it's one of the positive events which took place over the last 6 months. Same can be said about the negative events, the political crisis and the low efficiency of the work of the parliament, and such events which could be positive and negative. The personnel associated problems, nomination or appointment of Groisman as a prime minister of Ukraine, the formation, in fact, a new government. It's the personnel characteristics and other, like nomination of Yuri Lutsenko as the prosecutor general, among other positive aspects which could be named among the experts. This is certain activization of the anti-corruption activity and the beginning, or rather high-profile cases by the National Anti-Corruption Committee and Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, and the long-expected reform which started with the introducing some amendments into the effective constitution. Negative events, intensification, or let's say of the warfare in the eastern parts of Ukraine. We have the very bad news from there. Among the negative events, we can mention not only the appointment of Yuri Lutsenko as a general prosecutor general. Very often experts say how this nomination or appointment took place. how the voting took place. If we are going to talk more about the successes, which were mentioned by experts in this polling, so in addition to the governmental crisis, which has been resolved anyway, and that some kind of anti-corruption activities took place, we can also say about some smaller stabilization of the economy and decommunization. You were talking about the foreign policy of Ukraine. Here again, everything is clear. Experts mentioned that rather big success of Ukraine is the continuation of sanctions, economic sanctions against the Russian Federation, and the cooperation of NATO has been increased and intensified, which has been corroborated by the results of the Warsaw NATO summit. Also, if we're talking about foreign policy, the signing of the free trade area with Canada. If we're talking about some of the negative effects, there are quite a few, and experts name them. Among the positive events are the first results of combating the top corruption of the top echelon of powers. Also, among negative results, is the part of the experts are confident that we haven't achieved yet real results while fighting corruption. Among the negative events in the domestic policy, we can mention that the parliamentary coalition is rather conditional, and in order to pass this or not decision, they have to ensure that other deputies of the MPs from other factions or can also join them. What we can call it the failure, the increase of the terrorists, and the majority of the local population were not ready for that. Speaking about the foreign policy, again, we are the failure of the referendum in the Netherlands regarding the Ukraine-EU, or the fact that they postponed the decision or issue of providing Ukraine with the free visa regime, then Minsk process. And so far, we do not have any progress, and there are no concessions regarding the restoration of the territorial integrity of Ukraine. If you're talking about the assessment of the key institutions of authorities as compared to the second half of the same period of 2015, this decreased. Poroshenko 4.1 according to 10-point scale. 3.8 for the government, for the parliament, and the government has changed. If we can, and they compared the assessment of its new congressional governments as compared to its new government, their points also decreased to for one. As for the governmental Grossman, we have 4.7 for Grossman, 3.1 for Yatsenyuk. In speaking about the reforms, the experts recommend the top reforms which should be taken care of. First of all, we can say that there is a big demand for judicial reform and justice to be introduced, and also important the reform of the law enforcement bodies and the prosecutor's office, and combating corruption, including the establishment of the special anti-corruption reports. Thank you. Speaking about what has been mentioned by the experts, maybe nothing new, but it's clear that all of that is somehow they have kind of almost unanimous opinion, which corresponds to the real things. Now I'd like to give the floor to Alexei Garan, Scientific Director of the co-chair of Democratic Initiative Foundation, Professor of Political Studies of the National University of Kyiv Academy. So please talk more about what are attacks, what we can expect in the future, what can happen, what cannot happen, whatever. So, okay, let's waste our time. I'm going to start with the following. What was said by Irina at the very beginning, that we have the war both on the front line and here in the rear parts behind the lines. I would like to say that the frontline wars or the events which took place in the Maidan, everything seems to be much simpler. We could understand here we are, they are over there, the law or the good and the bad were separated. We are going to analyze the situation in Ukraine. everything is quite is absolutely more confusing, and we are talking about the Pavel Sheremet, who actually was always a very true and dedicated journalist, but he analyzed the events not from the point of view the dilemma, let's say, betrayal or let's say the shame, and but he actually he was always kept to the decent principles. Speaking about the experts' assessments, they mentioned the continuation or extension of the period of sanctions. Well, actually, Ukraine did not provide any concessions. We somehow managed to bypass the special status of the Donbass or the law on the elections. What we can expect in the future, the situation is going to aggravate because it would be more and more difficult to preserve or to keep on this status regime of sanctions. And what is being done by the Russian Federation, something like kind of pressure on their part on us and our Western partners in order to pass the law on their principles. I'm talking about the law on the elections on the occupied territories. I cannot exclude the possibility that it can become possible, I mean, in the fall. The matter is that we have to pass the law on our conditions, in terms of conditions, not those who are proposed by Putin and his clique, and which will make it impossible in the elections of in the occupied territories. We could say, okay, we passed the law and we ticked it off, but we actually, based on the conditions which make it impossible to have those elections. If we cannot ensure some kind of security or safety there, it's absolutely obvious that the parliament will not pass this law. Also, it's very important that within the framework of the NATO summit, which was absolutely unexpected by me, they clearly mentioned, fixed in the document, first comes security, then political settlements. If we are talking about the failures in the foreign policy, also mentioned the referendum in the Netherlands, but it was beyond our control anyway. So we can say that both the Netherlands referendum and Brexit and the problems associated with not providing the visa-free regime. All of those factors are beyond our control, but they create a negative surrounding for us, and we have to, which says us that we have to do everything in good time. So maybe we could have that regime. I mean, but it's in our nature. Oh, and then never mind. We'll do that later in the last hour, last minute. Okay. The situation is not favorable to us now. That's why they extend or they postpone giving us the visa-free regime at least till the fall of this year. Now speaking about the domestic situation. Out of the important positive things, I believe it's constitutional reform, which was adopted by the two-thirds of the parliament. Well, again, to some extent, absolutely unexpected. It's very good that very difficult political forces were united there, both the coalition and the opposition. I'm talking about the opposition we call the democratic opposition, those who actually provide their votes for the amendments to be introduced in the Constitution. We're talking about the judicial reform. What's being done now, the Prosecutor General's office is positive, but we have to wait whether those steps they take now will be efficient. The special thing are the verdicts by the court, and we have to wait for those. We know even those who do not have the immunity of the parliamentary immunity, but even those criminals somehow manage to escape from here. So we'll have to wait until the fall of this year to see what happens. Speaking about the election before time, if we are to analyze the results of the poll, and we can see that the composition of the Parliament will not change drastically because, as a result of the premature, let's say before pre-time elections, more MPs go to the Tymoshenko-Leshko parties, etc. And but the situation is, if we are talking about the efficient government and the active parliament, the situation is not that clear. So far, we managed to avoid this kind of the the election before time. I'm generally speaking about the national elections, but we understand the coalition doesn't have enough votes. But the same issue whether this quasi-coalition of the Grossman government will manage to show some positive results. If they do that, then we'll be able to avoid the elections before time. If we are going to have the corruption-associated scandals, or there will be a fight between the local Petro Poroshenko and People's Front parties, the fight will continue. Then those elections will be inevitable.
I give the floor to Mr. Matvienko, publicist and activist, political expert at the Strategic Consulting Corporation, Darika. So today the data was published, the data of UNO, according to it, during July, 27 people, 27 servicemen died that month, and the main indicator that should provide the information about today's realia should be war, and some institutional capabilities reduce, and that shows whether our power is really responsible and control current situation. And we should say that the government changed, but in reality it didn't. The government of Groisman continues the same policy that was delivered by its new government, especially in social economic sphere. And the parliament went on holiday, and they introduced the draft law of the resolution, but they didn't adopt it, and according to the law, we should have had it already. So we cannot say about the coalition, because coalition is formed individually, and there should be 226, and we have 223, and Mr. Parobi said that this is not his responsibility to provide such a list. And also, tariffs continue to grow, and they said that Batькivshchina party, compared with other parties, it turns into extremum, and this is a political leader, and this result has reasons. So the expectations of the public coincide with their actions, and this is the smallest faction, and for them it is difficult to reach results. But the government introduced draft law of Yulia Tymoshenko on cancellation, partly cancellation of tax on pensions, and the issue of tariff is actual, and we should proceed with this. And on Sunday there were elections in 7 districts, and these elections took place, and this is important. This is done through electoral mechanisms, not through Maidans, and in 7 districts, in two group Kropwen, and 2 Batькivshchina party won, and this is the only political party that is represented in the parliament as parliamentary factions, and they increased their results. So we see the results of surveys that they coincide, and this is a positive thing. But we understand that early elections according to this law, and I agree here with my colleagues, that in accordance with the current legislation, we cannot change the quality of the parliament. So the early elections are the only way to for Poroshenko to overcome the situation. And if we are speaking about early elections, we should change the law on election, and we should adopt it at the same proportional basis that on which our councils function now. So they are. This is done through majoritarian component, because the same elections, whether in Chernihiv or in other regions, so there are some bribery voters and corruption, so we cannot say that Warsaw Summit was successful for Ukraine. The success was only that we were invited there. But the matter is accession, and NATO is the principal moment. They got time when they can get it, and Georgia took about Georgia, they took principal position. Now countries can be accessed while having some problems with their territory. So Ukrainian delegation didn't put that issue on the agenda about judicial reform. So the judges, the changes will be introduced in September, but the judges take decisions about the re-establishing the people in the positions, and they even cancelled the decisions of the Supreme Council. So this reform increases institutional incapability and not liquidated. So I believe that this is not positive side. But I believe that what helps us when we say that the state has its responsibility and the public takes responsibility on itself, and we have volunteer movements, and we know that this is sometimes used by political forces and Groisman's government, and autumn will be really tense, and if we don't reach agreement on the parliament on indexation of pensions and tariffs, if they will use savings, deal with savings of citizens, we will have some situations in the streets. So we believe that common sense will win, and there won't be any counteraction from on this. So General Director and Head of Applied Political Studies, Mr. Fisenko. Thank you for invitation and for the opportunity to speak. I will focus on the trends. I agree with assessment of this research and survey about the main events that were during these half years, and they are evident, and this half year was very had many different events, and new prime minister and general prosecutor appeared. So each year we have new prosecutor general. But we saw several changes as to new government and new prime minister. And the survey, I want to draw your attention to the assessment. Groisman has better scores than Yatsenyuk, and this is that the change of government neutralized somehow political crisis, and Groisman, people have neutral attitude towards him. He is seen as technical, not political prime minister. But it doesn't mean that he is not under the risks. So about the trends, this half year we saw some explicit trends as to parliament and government, from broad coalition to broad opposition. We had coalition from 5 factions last year, and then we have 4 factions, and now we have only 2. And I agree with my colleagues that according to European norms, this is the government of minority. And there are some political ideas, and the parliament and government, they try to take their positions, and the coalition work in this way, or we have otherwise we will have early elections without any certainty about the results and how the coalition will be created, and we know the position of our international partners, and also the broad coalition appeared. This coalition is versatile, and it will be difficult for them to work. But this is an additional risk for coalition and for government. As to fighting corruption, this research shows a paradox. Ukrainian policy is the policy of paradox, and public opinion and ambiguity. And here we can see in the assessment of the experts that they are dissatisfied with fighting corruption, and also they indicate the progress. And for the last 2 months, we see active work of General Prosecutor's Office and National Anti-Corruption Bureau. It now works, and I would assess the situation and the trends that if at the start of the year the situation was dominated by anti-corruption scandals, and we see anti-corruption arrests. So from scandals to arrests, so this is the progress. But then, till the end of the year, if there will be further positive developments, there should be positive decisions of the court. And if they won't be so, people will be disillusioned by it. That's why we are at the crossroads. And we should bring these cases to positive court decisions, and otherwise it will deteriorate the attitude to law enforcement forces. And if we will have these decisions, so the situation will be better. About the parliament, when they need to, they take decisions, and they introduce constitutional changes, and many people didn't expect it, but we see a lot of problems in the work of the parliament, not in the work of coalition. On Friday, we will meet, and today we have morning, so on Friday is the black day for Ukrainian parliament, the day of shame, I would say. When people do not attend, there are many absentees, so this is the precondition for parliamentary reform and the enforcement of discipline, both from the side of legal factors and from the side of political factors. As to conflict in Donbass, situation is paradoxical. From one side, we see that there is slow escalation of conflict, and at the same time, it remains relatively stable, and it is half frozen, some sort of managed military situation. When they want to, they increase the level of escalation. When they need to, they decrease this level. And we do not manage this process. The switch is in the hands of Russia, and I believe that here the risks will extend till the end of the year, and I do not see the preconditions for quality changes in the situation in Donbass or for peaceful settlement in this conflict. The negotiations continue, but they are in stagnation phase, and there is bad situation in the negotiation process. And about the international situation, my colleagues were speaking about it, so I would sum up, and I would say about the trends. The situation becomes more complex, more complicated. So there are many problems, and in Europe and in Turkey and in Armenia, Kazakhstan, we see many events, turbulence increases, and in Europe there is crisis, Brexit, and this complicates the situation for us, and Russia uses the situation. And this is not a pretext for panic, and I believe we should change the tactics. We should activate our work in external direction, and we should react on new challenges. And as to NATO, I believe that here I wouldn't go into extremes. Georgia, as a small country, they got prospects. They are not speaking about concrete dates of accession. As to, I believe that here I would agree with my colleagues that we moved in the direction of NATO, but we should have other tactics in our relationship with NATO. If we will try to enter closed doors, then maybe they can say, no, guys. So the direct answer, no, won't work with us. It will work for the benefit of Russia. That's why we need more flexible tactics. So we should go along our way, maybe not directly, because this is really difficult for different reasons. That's why foreign international situation is really difficult now. And about midterm election, this is the test of political situation. So there is a situation of paradox. Presidential party lost this election, but the power didn't lose. So in a relative sense, 3 deputies will be directly or indirectly the partners of the coalition, the deputies from UKROP. So they have neutrality, they are, but they can cooperate, and we saw it during the election. There were some agreements with Dnipro and Volyn, we know about it, and some people say about it. So the success of Batkivshchina, we saw it, and it is reflected by social logic survey, and the balance of forces that opens for us the intrigue for the autumn, and the main intrigue of the autumn will be really hot, and this is tariff problem. So political forces that want early elections, and people really concerned about tariffs. And procedurally, if this crisis will be in full, so whether there will be a crisis in autumn, we don't know. If government will implement subsidies, maybe they can neutralize today's political risks. And the continuation of competition in parliament, it can go out in the streets. But this is the intrigue for the autumn, and I forgot to say and mention one more important event, and I mean the return of Savchenko. This is an interesting trend. There were more expectations than consequences. So she remains the most reigning politician, but there is people overestimate her political status. But the trend is people want to see new faces. They got disillusioned in political leaders, as we saw it in the survey, and surveys that reflect the trust of people to politicians. So people got disillusioned with political leaders, and they want to search for new faces. So this is one of the most important trends now.
Я бачу,
Thank you. I can see that Victor Boshenko already holds a mic, so welcome, you're welcome. I'll try to be very brief. Regarding the kind of the broad opposition, I believe we actually flatter this opposition bloc, that they are opposition. They actually in the name selected specifically for this, that actually we find ourselves in a very foolish situation when in the parliament we have 2 different oppositions and there is no majority. And the major trend which I would like to draw attention to is the voluntary delegation of the powers from the parliament to anybody. I have such understanding that they actually were active in trying to get into parliament, and then they do not want to shoulder any responsibility. This is a bad situation. Speaking about these intermediary elections, I also watched that where the power that be could operate, they use the administrative resources, and there will be some hints about that in the Verkhovna Rada. And Batkivshchina, maybe Tymoshenko still has some kind of interest in the victories, and of course very powerful party network which has actually struck a lot of roots in the Ukrainian society. I repeat myself, the most important is kind of voluntary They clan part of parliament, they are parliamentaries. And also we have the next, I witnessed the real parliamentarization, which is real thing. They mentioned the brilliant judicial reform, but please do not have any doubt, nothing will come out of that. And as a result, we have a situation which is absolutely unlike the previous presidential cycles. Why presidential? Because each president tries to take to himself through different, using different techniques, to take on to himself more authorities and become beyond any kind of responsibility. Under Kuchma, everything was dictated by the presidential administration, but also cabinet ministers and the parliament were working. Under Yanukovych was the same, was concentration within the three branches of power. But here, everybody suffers. Very weak is the cabinet ministers. A young, very energetic Mr. Grossman, then we hear somebody, his voice from somebody else's mouth, and he said, "What did they say?" So, like, Americans say that regarding the exploration of the moon, that there was a small step on the part of humankind. This can be said about Grossman, which is bad. The same happens with Verkhovna Rada, but this is they directly reflects on the relation between different branches of power. They are all of them weakened. I can say that everything is concentrated in the administration president. On the surface of that, yes, the president is the most visible player. Yes, to write technical cabinet ministers, but he failed to carry out any reform. This means a bit bad situation for the autumn part. Too many black swans flying over Ukraine. I would put this figurative word, and then they will try to place the responsibility, put the blame at the doors of each other in their turn. This is really bad. Speaking about Batkivshin, they are well done. They did. They reached their goal. Maybe this is associated with the fact that I become more specific in my assessment of the errors and mistakes committed by Ukrainian politicum, but we are talking about the very rough and the cruel methods, methods applied in order to deform, to distort the voters' opinion. They try to tame the opinion of the voters and to get them used to such situation. Whatever you say, whatever you vote, the situation will be the way we want it. So any woman coming to the market comes to the market, and she hopes that she will buy some meat without any bones. But she's going to be deceived, and she knows that she's going to be deceived, and she goes there again and again. But you cannot do without food. That's why elections number 1, 2, and 3 will take place, and gradually the composition of the parliament will change. But yes, Ukrainians do not know who to elect. Because the cream of society you can see here on this platform, but they do not know from who they should select somebody. Starting from since 2014, the new trait in Ukrainian minds, which is going to make a difficult life for us as sociologists. I'm talking about the emergence of the political memory. You remember about the Heavenly 100 and Maidan, which was not the case before. We would forgive everybody with the time passing. Every 2 years, we would say hello to new politicians, whatever. But once again, I say the bad trait, the bad situation that if you're talking about those rumors in the parliament, all those very turbulences which you can see on the screen of our TVs, they have a very negative outcome, and the number of those black swans becomes bigger and bigger, and I don't know who's going to resolve the available situation. Thank you. The floor is given to Alex Akyan, leader of the United Coordination Center Donbass. We understand that this year Donbass is going to remain the problem number 1 in Ukraine, so what can we expect? Thank you for the invitation extended to me to participate here. Speaking about the results of our studies, successes and failures, what actually address matters, first of all, that the successes, failures and successes are kind of leapfrog, and they are associated with each other. Let's say they're trying to avoid responsibility for the corruptioners, which is not the plus of the combating corruption, but the failure because we cannot bring them to responsibility. We can divide all the problems tactical, strategic. Speaking about success, we unfortunately overwhelming majorities, tactical, strategic ones prevail in our failures. This is a kind of trend which speaks about the reactivity of the political forces. Also, this was mentioned by the experts of failure, which says lack of systemic nature of those changes. No reforms. And seemingly the reforms are underway, but on the other hand, nothing's been done. Now they're speaking about the assessment experts. If we compare 2016 to 2015, we actually from not very high level of assessment come to the low level of assessment. We actually have the different assessment. The presidential administration, cabinet ministers, number one, number two, and parliament. The evaluation actually has been decreased in the opinion of all the experts, which means that something bad is happening to all the branches of power. We can put the blame at the door with just one institution, though on the other hand, it were correct. We have to demand more from the parliament because the work of the parliamentary presidential republic, not the vice versa, and they should not try to get their task to some of the other shoulders. Speaking about the reforms, I would like to place emphasis on the local governance reform and decentralization, since we have another problem which becomes more conspicuous, kind of not directly, but anyway. We are talking about the low institutional capability, which becomes lower and lower today. I witnessed the rupture in the links between the national and local governments, the increase of the prices, the statements of the local management. It means that the government, actually, the powers lose the reins of control or something like that, and this poses a lot of challenges before Ukraine. Speaking about the reforming of decentralization associated with decentralization in local governance in the civil service. Further on, I didn't see the issue of IDPs if one of the possibility to resolve the situation of the bus, since we do have the wartime in the whole territory of Ukraine, where we are talking about the resolution of this conflict. We should not talk only about the external factors and external players. We have to take our very definite position. If you're talking about the occupied territories, we can find some kind of justification for the poor situation there, but we have the more than 1 million IDPs. In relation to them, we have the kind of reverse policy in order to push them back. We are not taking care of reintegration of them into society, but actually making them believe less and less about there's something to be done. And the Yeltsin government started this kind of shameful policy, and the same refers to the Grossman government, which under whom this actual negative situation became more systemic. One quotation. Yesterday we had one of the forums which was dedicated to a similar topic, where Bernd de Korup, the OSCE mission of Ukraine representative, he said that for the want of time, he can name only one hindrances between Ukraine and European space. He gave only one reason. Let's say they stopped to pay some kind of the special payments to the IDPs in Ukraine. Again, a lot has been said already. We are talking about the situation well built today, that it's very difficult to find the white swans among the black ones. the intermediate elections showed the new leader political, the Batkyvchina party. We can do anything about that. Statistics are statistics. There are new forces appeared. A lot of candidates were kind of self-appointed ones, and we can see the political field can be now activates at the lower level. There are regional, local leaders who start their fight to make their way into the central politicum. We are talking about systemic work on the different issues, and the leader is going to be more responsible for their actions, and then maybe we should ask more questions, pose them to the Kivchina party regarding the IDP associated policy. If they decide to be leaders, they have to behave as leaders. And again, if you're talking about the new elections, which are going to take early elections, which will take most likely part. Summary: we have a number of failures. In some of the areas, we have some positive changes, transformations. But on the other hand, the government tries to do everything possible to freeze the situation and to win some time, to stall. I've heard the latest speeches, and I believe one of the failures of the government and the authorities, which hasn't been fixed by the experts, the lack of the efficient or required communication. Yesterday, I attended the RPR forum. And this is the Association of the Public and NGO Organizations, which deal with different reforms. There are special experts dealing with those issues, who are very critical about the authorities. They try to exert pressure on the one hand, on the other hand, they try to cooperate, if applicable, so to say. There are a lot of different things which I personally, a person who on a constant basis I take special interest in the information carried by mass media, but even I myself I didn't know about that. So this kind of communication, when the people even do not know about some small victories, that means that those victories or those positive things are tactical, but sometimes the big battles can be won by a resolute attack. But so far, we do not have something like that. We have some kind of very insignificant progress, which can say about the Prozoro or declaration. But so far, at least in a very selected way, we start our attack or onslaught upon the corruptioners. Would like to have a situation when it would be more vivid by the end of the year. But unfortunately, the authorities do not make it public. They do not bring it to the awareness of the people. And unfortunately, it's kind of pessimistic sentiments. For the one, on the one hand, we do have the grounds for that, of this kind of the sensations. But on the other hand, which could be very dangerous in our society, is the loss of hope, aspirations, and belief in our strengths, but activation or the intensification of the activities of the civil society. Because we can say that if after the Orange Revolution, the society has not been weakened. They did not come back to their, let's say, domiciles or their homesteads in order to just to come down. So, bottom line is we have to still believe, keep believing in our strengths, our powers. Maybe this is kind of pathological optimism on my part, but I can say my slogan: until we live, nothing has been finalized. Actually, I have the slogan since 2006, when it seemed to me that everything was doomed to fail or whatever. But we still have 5 minutes to go. Very quickly, I believe that the problem of Poroshenko lies in the fact that he thinks the biggest problem is in the lack of strategic communications. I do not agree with that. Now, I agree with Irina here. when she said that there are tactical successes and strategic failures, or the lack of strategic successes. This is the core of the problem. So if we have the strategic successes, then we can have some transformation. So the problem lies not in the communication, but in the essence. Now I would like to say that Victor and Oleg are my friends, but you know, when they say, once we met on the bus, they were smiling, and they told me, "We know who you are. You are Nebozhenko." So it happened a long time ago. What I would like to say. I would like to say that the earlier elections of intermediate elections show that Batькivщина is the unquestionable leader. No, we can't say that. Actually, out of 7, 3 of those are not the people of the BPP or Poroshenko, but those are people who are going to join the authorities. But Batькivщина have 2, number 1. Now, what's the result of Adavchenko? And I do have a very, my attitude towards him is very positive. The difference between him and the second place is several hundred votes, but that was a lack of people who turned to come to the polling stations. We can talk about the failure of one of the candidates who actually was expected to administer the resource. Now another one, Bogdan, he was excluded from the party when he voted for the Yanukovych party proposals. Does it really demonstrates the situation, the available situation here? The problem is not that Tymoshenko does not collect the necessary election rating, but the problem lies who is going to join the parliament. Yes, but Batькivщина is number 1 according to the party list, but we cannot say that those intermediary elections is kind of electoral victory of Batькivщina. 2 out of 7 with such results, I would not say that, would not dare to state that. Briefly, my professor has a reason when he says that there is the question towards the quality of the MPs or the party lists. But the matter lies in different. But Batькivщина is the only party with 17-year history. If we compare this party with other parties, we can call the other parties, just one season parties. We can call them this way. The BPP and People's Front. So, and again, correspondence to the demands or the expectations on the society, and and the BPP, when they actually did not justify the expectation of demand, and the society actually responds to what is better to them. Yeah, when I was talking about that, I was talking about sociological research, not only the intermediary elections. Once again, I repeat myself, because you lost the most important when you mentioned that. The most important for the political forces not to base only one topic, but take a broad spectrum of strategic issues. I would like to say that Batькivщина party is really electoral leader according to the results of the polls, and it would be reasonable to talk about some kind of intermediary topics. If they declare themselves to be leaders, they have to act accordingly. Again, what I'm very much unhappy about that the IDP's issues and other issues are not in focus of attention. Speaking about the parliamentary republic, the experience of European parliamentary republics, that the key player is not the parliament, but the cabinet of ministers, because the parliament is not a consolidated subject, and the key role is played by the government in those republics, and we have to have the same situation. The other story, this our tradition. Even the politicians and the citizens, they believe the key figure to be the president, and it is the president who has to resolve different conflict situations, whether we like it or not. Maybe Mr. Kaliushka, one of the forums he said aptly, that Poroshenko fills the gaps and the holes in the chaotic political process which we witness today. So, speaking about the communication or strategic and tactical achievements, you know, when we had two Maidans, you know, we could consider them as strategic breakthrough, which resulted they entailed failures. Why? Because we do not have we rely on the successful everyday successful work, and I agree with you. Same holds for communication, which is still lacking. For the if you're talking about the government and different reforms, etc., etc. This was the problem of the previous government to some extent of this government as well. And the last thing, a very depressed one. I agree with Yuri here. By the way, to the year 2003, the best rates of economic growth we had in 2003, like in China. But the feelings were absolutely different. This is a paradox. But we have to fight the depression, which is still very conspicuous in our society. Otherwise, we won't achieve anything. And again, I would like to mention Pavel Sheremet. He was fighting all the time all those things. We should not say live under the feelings of everything is lost or this is a shame. We have to achieve small victories or small successes and be happy with every small success. We can understand that this autumn is going to be very turbulent. One remark. Today marks 100 days since the Grossman became the prime minister. Actually, yesterday was a big protection of this day, of 100th day of Grossman's government. Thank you.
Относительно Крыма ничего сегодня никто не говорил, но все-таки интересно, какие перспективы.